Hamish Conway here, and welcome to another episode of Tacos Tuesday. This is episode 85, and this session is going to be fantastic. Seb has done some amazing work through the Prime Week that we've just had recently in Australia, and we've broken down in two ways. And we're going to show you an aggregated view of a like for like from one year to another with a cohort of customers that we were looking after last year and this year. We're not going to spend too long on that. We're going to dive into a case study just to show you the thinking behind how we approach helping a brand through Prime Day and the results that were achieved. So it's going to be a cracker, a little bit technical in some parts, but that is absolutely fine. And one thing that will help you understand what we're going to be talking about here is coming up on Thursday, the 13th of August, we're having an AMC, Amazon Marketing Cloud, Masterclass. And this will be from 11 a.m. through to 12:30, including some Q&A time. Now, you might have heard of AMC and kind of know what it's about because it's a data clean room. If you've listened to some of our podcasts, you'll have learned a bit. But this Masterclass, it'll be on Zoom and with breakout rooms, and it's going to be very educational. It's going to help you just start to understand how you can use it inside of your business to play by the new set of rules. And this is what brands like we're going to show you today are doing, and it is completely an unfair advantage. So if you're not using AMC, then you must be on this. The link to register will be in the show notes. You can also go to our website, gosellglobal.com, and just scroll down the page a little bit and you'll see the event registration page there, and it goes into detail what we're going to be covering. So definitely go check that out. Even maybe pause now and go do that and then come back to this. Okay. All right. So we'll dive into it. I'll share my screen. If you're not watching on YouTube or Spotify, that doesn't matter because we'll talk to it here. Okay. Seb, this is the Prime Day 2026 versus 2025. And the comparison, the window in 2025, it was 8th to the 14th of July this year, the 7th to the 13th. And both of them, I believe, being Tuesday through a Monday being the last day. So look, let's dive in and have a look at this. And obviously Australia focused, and this is a cohort of just brands in Australia that we were working with last year and this year to give you a sense of things. So look, Seb, give us the headlines. What was the headline results that you saw?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously this is a comparison from the same event last year. So when we're talking about that, that's something to consider with these percentage and growth increases. So we measured 4 separate metrics in the headline, which was total revenue, one of the most important ones, total units, because we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just price related, ad spend, and then ad attributed sales. And so across those 4 different metrics, we saw a 55% growth in revenue, a 55% increase in units, a 68% increase in ad spend, and a 49% increase in ad sales. And these were all off fairly large bases as well. So we're not talking a small base here. So that was kind of the headline numbers. What you'll notice amongst those headline numbers is that ad spend outgrew ad sales as a percentage. But keep in mind that ad spend in this example was at 94,000 for the period and went up to 160, whereas ad sales was 585K and it went up to 874K. So much bigger when we're talking about total numbers, so to speak there.
And so, I mean, was that surprising to you to see a 55% growth in sales for the week from 1.63 million to 2.5 million? Was that, and the units aligned, was that surprising or not?
It was, and it was because it's pretty soft out there across a lot of the brands we talk to in retail. And so we didn't think that Prime was going to do as well as it probably has done historically. And so that was a surprise to see the amount of growth that we did for sure.
Okay. So as we look at then, obviously there was increased ad spend, but tell us about the story here in terms of the full picture of organic sales. So, you know, that's the ultimate game there, that you get the free organic sales, said with quotation marks.
Yes.
Tell us about what we noticed there.
Yeah, so as everyone knows, our podcast is called Tacos Tuesday, and that's because that metric's important. It includes our organic sales. And as we've mentioned many times on this show before, we want to use ads to grow our organic sales as much as possible because it's a unique situation to Amazon that you can't get in Meta, you can't get in Google, you can't get in these other places where you can use advertising really to boost that organic placement piece. So one of the metrics that we love looking at is organic share. And that's because we want to see over the years, is the event becoming more ad dependent? And the reality is it will eventually become more ad dependent. But based on what we looked at for this period of time, we compared total sales, organic sales, and ad sales from 2025 to 2026. And organic share this year held at 65%, and last year it was at 64%. So basically the same as it was last year. So that's really good. That just means the flywheel's still working. There's still opportunity for that organic growth, and we want to continue to invest while that's the case.
Yeah, good. And so that's like the total sales grew 900,000, and 600 of that came from organic, and 300 of that came from ad sales, give or take $5,000 here or there. But that ratio it grew in proportion, which is a really good sign.
That's right. Yeah.
Great. So the increased ad spend was driving increased organic sales is the key goal.
Yeah, and one of the things here to sort of mention why organic share kind of decreases over time. Part of that's because of the amount of inventory that Amazon has to sell, and they increase the amount of inventory that they essentially have. And when I say inventory, I'm talking about ad inventory on their website. So in the US, where we also have context of like what happens over there, a lot of the placements now are all paid placements, and so that share increases over time.
Interesting. All right, and then so we look at the curve. From day 1 sales through to day 7 sales. And if you're looking at this, you can see a clear U shape. So talk to me about this, Seb. Any surprises from what we kind of come to expect? What did you notice this Prime Day?
Yeah, anyone that's been listening for a while knows that I'm big on the first day of the event. That held true again this year, where the first day, the pent-up demand kind of explodes out of the gate and then kind of dissipates over the next few days as the event carries on. And then the fear of missing out catches people at the end. They realize there's not any more good deals going, and so then they make their purchase that they might have been sitting on for a while. That curve continued this year. The only surprising piece this year is the back end of the event was much stronger than we'd seen historically. So the opening day was a 48% increase on the previous year. The final day was actually a 78% increase, and the efficiency held as well. So not only was it a 78% increase on the previous year, it also improved from a return on investment point of view as well. So people may be holding a little bit longer than usual to the back end of the event, but why that's really important is the back end of the event is actually typically what brands don't take advantage of the most, because it's when they run out of inventory, it's when they run out of budget, it's when people get complacent because they think the event is over, but actually some of the biggest gains you can have are on that last day.
Yeah. Well, like the second to last day was as big as the second day, and the last day was, actually second pretty close. Day. Yeah, second biggest day overall. So that's noticeable. And look, and I think there's probably a few things here. Obviously, we're running some podcasts leading into this in terms of Prime Day preparation. And I want to take my hat off to you, Seb, for actually drinking your own Kool-Aid and working with the clients to make sure that they did all that prep was happening in terms of inventory, deal tags. I mean, deal tags are always a bit of a nightmare because you never know until the day how many are actually going to stick. It's not just what was happening during the event, it was all the lead into it, including some of the lead in advertising as well, which is where we'll lean to now in terms of a case study. So do you want to just kind of frame up this case study you're going to share with one of the brands who had a very good result through Prime Day?
Yeah. And just before we go on to the case study, I think it's important to frame what you said. The results we're showing you previous, like to those slides, are accounts that we've been managing. So they're pretty well managed through that period. But I have an example of a brand we took over just before Prime Day where we didn't really have the opportunity to put a plan in place and to have the right strategy. And it is vastly different, the results of that brand versus brands that we've been managing year on year. And the improvements that we've seen. So being prepared does make a difference, basically.
That's right. And look, and also in this example here that you give here with the AMC insights that I was touching on at the start there around the AMC Masterclass coming up. And I think when you hear this case study, this is going to be you won't be able to register for that event quick enough. But Seb, yeah, give us the background here on what you want to share.
Yeah, so this is a case study where we put an advertising strategy in place for this brand, and we sat down with them and we said, okay, what's the plan for this prime period? And we collected some data before we did this though. So we said, okay, we need to know how much our customers are worth during the event. Are they worth more or less to us than a normal customer? And when we say normal customer, we're talking about a customer we acquire, outside of a deal period. And the answer for this particular brand was no, they weren't worth more to us. And basically the way that we did that was leveraging AMC to understand, did that customer come back and purchase from us? How often did they come back and purchase from us? And what was the value of how much we were able to extract from them over that period of time? And so that really set the floor for, okay, we know that this customer that we're going to be offering a 20% discount to, because it's a deal event, isn't worth more to us than a normal event. So how do we make sure that we don't destroy our efficiency during this period by paying for a 20% promotion and then doubling that with increasing our advertising? And the strategy we came up with, looking at their historical data, and only available using AMC, by the way, we looked at using a lead-in strategy to basically warm our customers before the event began. And then during the event, we actually didn't pay a premium price. We used most of our spend in the lead-in strategy, or a good chunk of our spend in the lead-in strategy. And then we let the deals and the warmed audience, we did do some things like retargeting and things like that, but we used the lead-in strategy to really drive, and the promotions to really drive the performance during the event. And we were really happy in the end with the results that we got, which is why we created a case study of it all.
Great. I like it. Okay, so tell us, what were the results?
Cool. So this is, again, comparing on Prime last year to this year. So sales were up from 90,000 to 187,000, which was a 107% increase. The average selling price was stable at slightly lower this year at 3.4%. And that's important for a point that we'll get to later. The event multiplier was 2.15 times. And when we say event multiplier, we're comparing that to just a standard weekly run rate, like how much did it kind of increase to a standard weekly run rate. And the reason we used that event multiplier is because if we used percentages, it would have made the comparison not accurate. And then the last one was the lead-in conversion rate lift. And so what this basically means is, did we see an increase in conversion for customers who saw our ad pre the event or leading into the event and then converted during the event, versus who didn't see our ad in the lead in? And that last one's probably the biggest piece here, where we saw a 2.8 times lead in conversion rate lift from serving a customer before the event and then during.
That's amazing. Like literally nearly 3 times the conversion rate because they'd seen ads in the lead into the event. That's
absolutely.
That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and that growth, that 107, like that wasn't us getting crazy, like I said, destroying our efficiency by doubling our ad spend during the event or anything like that. We were deliberately conservative because we knew the lifetime value of our customers that we got from this event. And so we knew that overpaying for them would have been a mistake.
Yeah, okay. So the temptation versus having a plan.
That's right. Yeah, so some of the temptation was some of the stuff I just talked about. Most people go into Prime, they know it's a big event and they know they want to capitalize as much as possible on the volume that's there. But you can run into the trap of paying a lot more than you need to for your customers. And so that's kind of the temptation, is to double my ad spend, double my bids, triple my bids, triple my ad spend, and blast the event. Amazon advertising is becoming much more about using a scalpel rather than using a sledgehammer. And so the sledgehammer approach is double everything. The scalpel approach is understand the value of my customers by my different product groups and pay the right amount for those. And so the plan in this case was invest in the lead-in. Now, we didn't just make that up. We went and looked at last year's data and said, that's what the data's telling us to do. The data's saying to us, shoppers that were reached before and during the event converted at 2x the event only rate, that 2.8 that you saw, we wanted to grow that audience size because we knew that they were valuable.
Yeah. And this is where, like, if you don't know that, if you're not using AMC, you just don't know that. And so the only lever you've got is go, well, if we want to win during the event, then we've got to increase our bid. So that's and then that's just as wasting margin.
Yep. Yeah, and you got to be prepared for this stuff because a lot of time Prime comes around quicker than you expect. I know it does for me, and this is all we do. So being prepared for these things is important. So the other bit was we didn't bid up during the event. So in this case, we did an 11-month, and it's because we couldn't do the full 12-month at that point because the 12-month hadn't ticked over. But we did an 11-month LTV analysis where we looked at our Prime Day customers and we found out that they are not worth any more than our standard customers. But the other important piece is we learned that they're not worth less either, because sometimes you can have deal hunters that destroy your margins because all they're looking for is deals and discounting. And so as much as it was important to understand they're not worth more, it was also important to understand that they were not worth less as well.
Excellent. What else?
And then day one readiness beats bids. We've talked about this before, and we've kind of described it as the food pyramid. And at the bottom of that food pyramid, if you were to describe a food pyramid and say what's the most important fundamental and then work your way up, it is the fact that the products are retail ready. And so that's going to beat any kind of advertising strategy you have. That means stock, deal tagging, and budgets throughout the event. Those three levers are going to be your big levers. And that's going to kind of flow into that point 4, which is to stay live through the close. Like we talked about in the slides before, the end of the event was super strong. And a lot of brands missed out because they thought they'd done all the work and then they stopped paying attention after the first 4 or 5 days had passed. But the end of the event ended up being quite strong.
That's right. Yeah, that last day being not actually that far off the first. So yeah, that's great. All right. And then, so what else? So I guess with this sort of thing, you have a strategy, right? And then you see the results and then you've got to challenge it and go, okay, was it actually our strategy or was there some other thing at play that was contributing to those results, you know? And so you obviously ask those questions. And so tell us about what questions you asked to just stress test the results.
I think this is probably one of the most underrated skills or approaches to advertising. And that is not to just say, oh, good job, pat on the back and walk away, but to have critical thinking to say, okay, did what we do actually work? And can we get to the numbers that could tell us that? And that's what we're doing more and more now. Really the strategic questions, like what are the strategic questions? So in this case, I had 3 strategic questions. One of them was, I thought maybe the results we got were from new products being launched because this brand did launch new products. And these products weren't live the year before. So that was kind of number one. I'm like, okay, maybe the new products did most of this lift and it wasn't really the strategy we did at all. The second was maybe we discounted heavier, and this is why that ASP number that we mentioned before is important. But maybe we just discounted more this year and the discounts really carried the volume and it wasn't really anything we did with the advertising strategy at all. And then the third was eliminating those two, and I'll go through those two in a minute, but it's like, did the lead-in strategy as a whole sort of actually help? And so that's kind of what this slide is kind of talking to. And so we looked at the new products and yes, they did contribute. They were 31% of our growth, but the existing range that was live last year versus this year still grew by 74% by itself. So we knew that it wasn't just the new products that did the lift. We knew the existing range did the majority. The second being the discounts. We looked at our average selling price and there was some products that were less, which was the minus 3.4% in average selling price.
Yeah.
But that price movement isn't enough to have that 80% increase in units. So we knew it wasn't just price that was we knew it was a combination of price and visibility that was, so the visibility being the warmed audience and the ads side of things. And then the last is, did the lead-in strategy actually help? And it's like we doubling the absolute lift to 100K. And the linchpin here was that the warmed shoppers, and we'll get to this on the next slide and you'll see that, but the warm shoppers converted 3 times better than the event-only shoppers, and it grew. The size of that audience grew. So that was telling us that the event was effective.
Yeah, awesome. So you talked to us about the lead-in strategy then being so important.
Yep. So lead-in strategy was just us serving. And I've heard people talk about lead-in strategy being important before, but we wanted to validate it and rather than just accept it as truth. And so this is where we lent into AMC and we measured our lead-in plus event customers. We measured how many we had in 2025, how many we had in 2026, and then the conversion rate of those customers versus customers who only saw an ad during the event, and then versus customers who only saw the ad in the lead-in only. And as you can see, there was a 3x basically increase in conversion rate. Last year was 3.5x, this year was 2.8x, but averagely 3x increase in conversion rate from shoppers who had been exposed to a lead-in ad and an ad during the event versus ones that only had the event only versus ones that had only the lead-in only.
Mm.
And that's with that was with a growing audience size as well. So even though our conversion rate was slightly lower this year from 2025 to 2026, our audience size grew by nearly 69%. So
on the lead-in. So looking at that there, I can see the reach in 25 and 26 for event only is very similar, but it was the lead-in where the numbers were bigger.
That's
lead-in
right.
only. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, event only, it was actually down.
That's
year
interesting
on year.
though, isn't it? So it shows the event only. So in essence, like this lead-in traffic who then converted, that's almost what's making the difference.
Yeah. Interestingly, if you had left that out, you can see that actually we probably would have had an event where we went backwards.
The lead-in plus event, there's some in there, but yeah, the lead-in makes the biggest difference.
Yeah, lead-in plus event was where the biggest one was. The lead-in only was big, but again, that was partly driven because of us as well, right? Like the lead-in growth was driven by us. The lead-in plus event was driven by us. The event only was the section you could say that wasn't driven on by us. Now, there's a little bit of an argument that you could say, well, some of those event-only customers fall into the lead-in event because of the ads you served. But in any case, either way, no matter which way you dice it, it was a very positive result.
Yeah. And look, so in terms of just kind of starting to wrap things up on this here, so what can any brand take from this example here?
Spend early, not necessarily hire during the event. Understand what your customers are worth to you, because in this case, the customers weren't worth more, but I have seen other brands where customers are worth a lot more during deal events. And normally that's premium products, but I've also seen where customers are worth less. And so you need to right size your strategy based on what your customers are worth. There is not a one size fits all piece. And so you let your own AMC data set the aggression for you. How much should you pay based on the customer value data that you have? Don't pay more for them if you don't have to. Execution is the foundation, which we talked about. Don't worry about AMC if you're not going to have 80% of your products in stock and 50% without a deal tag. You're not ready for AMC at that point. And then in this example, we did include areas we could improve. And one thing we did pick up on was we think we could target more of the lead-in reached shoppers to try and convert them into shoppers during the event. And we're always looking to improve. So we'll always find something to get better at.
That's good. That's good. I like it. So, I mean, the big takeaway here is, again, is understanding the actual data and what is a typical out of deal event customer? What are they worth to you? Looking back on previous deal events to see though that cohort who purchased there, what did the lifetime value end up looking like? But if you don't know that information, you're just flying blind. And you can see here the impact of knowing this information, the uplift that you can have. So thanks, Seb, for sharing that. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, we have got an AMC Masterclass coming up on August the 13th, which is a Thursday, 11 a.m. to 12:30 Australian time. And Seb will be running through some more details around the structure and some other examples there and looking at some real data and some other angles on it there, so you can start to just open your mind to what is possible when you do know how to use AMC. So thanks again for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And go have a look at the show notes there and register for the AMC Masterclass coming up soon. All right. Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks, Seb, again. Appreciate putting that together.